The quiet street was still asleep when a motion-activated doorbell camera clicked on. At 4 a.m., the lens captured a shadowy figure dragging a bulky object wrapped in fabric across the pavement. The man strained under its weight. He stopped, adjusted his grip, and kept pulling it toward the family car. That object was his wife. Sheylla Cabrera, a 33-year-old mother of 3 young boys, had come from Peru to California with one dream: to give her children a life filled with stability and kindness. Friends described her as the type of person who radiated warmth, even though she carried the kind of burdens that would break anyone else. She worked long hours, juggled motherhood on her own most days, and still managed to keep hope alive for her sons, ages 9, 6, and 4. But the loving home she tried so hard to build had cracks that few could see. Behind the doors of her small apartment in Lancaster, darkness lingered. Sheylla's husband, 36-year-old Josimar Cabrera, was not the gentle family man outsiders thought he was. According to her mother back in Peru, the abuse had started long before they moved to the United States, and it never stopped. Her mother revealed that Sheylla had reported Josimar for violence in Peru years earlier. There were repeated incidents of physical and verbal attacks, and it didn't end with Sheylla. Even her youngest child, only 3 years old at the time, had suffered. Sheylla's friends often saw her hiding bruises behind makeup and a practiced smile. Josimar controlled every part of her life: her finances, her movements, and, most painfully, her children. Every time she tried to leave, he threatened to take the boys away forever. That fear became the chain that held her captive. Still, by the summer of 2025, something inside her changed. Sheylla had reached the point where staying felt more dangerous than walking away. She finally told close friends she planned to get a divorce. On August 9th, she called her parents in Peru one last time, explaining that she would soon report Josimar to authorities and take her sons to safety. She never got the chance. Inside that apartment, tensions had been escalating. Josimar sensed he was losing control, and his anger had been growing by the day. Sheylla believed she was planning her escape, but Josimar was planning something far more sinister. Rehook. What happened inside the apartment on August 10th would expose just how far Josimar was willing to go to keep control, even if it meant destroying everything. August 10th began like any other summer morning in Lancaster, but inside Sheylla's apartment, horror unfolded. The exact timeline of events remains sealed in court documents, yet investigators have reconstructed enough to understand what happened. This wasn't a sudden outburst. This wasn't a heated accident. Prosecutors say Josimar carried out the killing deliberately, using a knife. While 3 innocent children slept nearby, their mother was violently taken from them. Moments later, Josimar began preparing for the next phase of his plan: hiding the truth. He wrapped Sheylla's body in a large piece of fabric, the same material that would later appear in surveillance footage. He worked with disturbing calmness, as if every movement had already been rehearsed. By the early hours of the morning, he started cleaning his car's trunk. At around 2:40 a.m., a neighbor coming home from a night shift noticed him. She saw Josimar wiping down the trunk in the darkness, something no one would normally do at that hour. Even she admitted later that it gave her chills. But the clearest evidence came 2 hours later. A Ring doorbell camera across the courtyard picked up movement. The lens captured Josimar dragging a large, heavy bundle toward his car. The wrapped shape, unmistakably human-sized, bumped across the pavement as he struggled under the weight. That silent video clip would later become the centerpiece of the entire murder case. After loading the body into the trunk, Josimar drove deep into the Angeles National Forest, a place known for its steep cliffs and remote canyons.
he pushed Sheylla's body over the side of an embankment, abandoning her as though she meant nothing. Then he returned home and began constructing a series of lies. 2 days passed before friends reported Sheylla missing. When detectives arrived, Josimar spun several conflicting stories. First, he claimed ICE had taken her. Then, he changed his story, saying she ran off with another man. Later, he suggested she'd had some kind of accident, but provided no details. Every lie contradicted the previous one. Investigators quickly noticed the inconsistencies and the history of domestic violence reported by friends. Something was terribly wrong, and they knew it. But it was one piece of footage discovered almost by accident that instantly turned a missing person case into a homicide investigation.
On August 13th, detectives reviewing neighborhood surveillance obtained the footage that changed everything. The Ring camera video clearly showed Josimar dragging a heavy-wrapped object from the apartment at 4 a.m. Combined with witness accounts and his changing stories, investigators had enough to open a full homicide case. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department activated multiple search and rescue teams. Altadena, Montrose, Crescenta Valley, all dispatched to the sprawling Angeles National Forest. Searching its 700,000 acres was like looking for a needle in a desert, but they pressed on. Meanwhile, another alarming discovery surfaced. Josimar and the couple's 3 sons were missing too. Investigators believed he had fled the U.S. with them. Working with the Peruvian and Mexican consulates, authorities scrambled to locate the children. Within days, Peruvian officials confirmed the boys had safely reached Peru and were placed in protective custody. Josimar, however, was nowhere to be found. Then, on August 16th, the break investigators had been waiting for finally came. Search teams located material identical to what Josimar had been seen dragging in the video, lying at the bottom of a steep drop in the national forest. When detectives reached the site and opened the fabric, their fears were confirmed. It was Sheylla's body. The case was now airtight. The video, the lies, the domestic abuse, the discovery of the body, everything pointed to one person. Sheylla's community mourned deeply. A vigil outside City Hall brought her friends, neighbors, and supporters together. They held candles and signs reading, "Justice for Sheylla," and "Not one more." Her mother, thousands of miles away in Peru, was preparing to take custody of her grandsons, children who had lost both parents in a single, devastating act. Back in California, prosecutors moved swiftly. On August 21st, the district attorney filed a formal murder charge against Josimar, including the allegation that he used a knife as a deadly weapon. An extradition warrant was issued the next day. Interpol added him to their global wanted list with the red notice. With international pressure mounting, Josimar began running out of places to hide. As days passed, Josimar remained a fugitive in Peru. But unlike the United States, Peru had strict rules. Without official U.S. charges filed and received, local authorities could not legally detain him, even if they suspected him. Twice he was stopped by immigration officials in Mexico and Peru, questioned and released, but the pressure was intensifying. The case gained international attention. Media outlets across the U.S. and Peru shared Sheylla's story, increasing scrutiny on Josimar's movements. He was running out of time. Meanwhile, the children were repatriated to Los Angeles to be reunited with their grandmother, thanks to coordinated efforts between Peruvian authorities and the U.S. government. Finally, one part of the nightmare ended. The boys were safe. In Los Angeles, detectives continued building an unshakable case. With the body recovered, the surveillance footage secured, and formal charges filed, prosecutors arranged for extradition. Everything was ready. Then, in a surprising move, on August 27, 2025, Josimar walked into the Interpol headquarters in Lima and surrendered himself. Peruvian National Police released footage of him wearing an Interpol insignia shirt, hands cuffed, led by officers through the building. The man who had tried to outrun justice had nowhere left to go.
The extradition process could take months, but one thing was clear: Josimar would remain in Peruvian custody until he was flown back to Los Angeles to face trial for Sheylla's murder. For Sheylla's family and friends, justice was finally moving forward. While nothing could undo the suffering she endured or return the life stolen from her, the wheels of accountability had begun turning, and they weren't stopping. Her story became a reminder of the silent struggles many victims face behind closed doors, and the importance of listening to those cries for help and the devastating consequences when those cries go unanswered. Now the world waits for the final chapter, the trial. And in the courtroom, one question will hang in the air. Will the man who tried to flee halfway around the world finally be held accountable for the life he destroyed?